Hi, it's Ed Weinberg. Today we're going to talk about lead and we're going to talk about the new lead policy at HUD. We've got Bob DeCosmo here, but first a little bit about who I am. My name is Ed Weinberg. I'm president of Dex Property Solutions. We buy houses. You can find me at dexprop.com. I am also an associate broker at Keller Williams Realty. You can find my website at Ed Sells My House. This broadcast and others live at CTRE Media on Facebook, and you can join our group CTRE Investors. So let me bring in Bob, and Bob can introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he does. Bob, who are you? What do you do?
Hey, Ed, how are you tonight? Well, I guess that's a loaded question. The biggest accomplishment in my life is I've got 5 wonderful kids. But I got into this crazy real estate business back in 1982. And it's taken me from property manager, property developer, to kind of advocate at the state capitol. And I don't understand why I wound up at the capitol, but I've been there since 1994, fighting for what one would say private property owner rights. And it's been a wonderful journey, but I gotta be honest with you, it's getting more and more difficult to stop or push back on some of the policies that are being created here in Connecticut as well as nationally. And I think tonight we're going to talk about a national policy, because this had nothing to do with the Connecticut legislature, but it came right out of HUD and down in Washington. So I just would like to get into the flow of this discussion, because what bothers me most is that nobody knew this was coming. There were only 52 people in the entire country for the course of several months that made comments on this. Of course, if you really wanted to make comments, you needed to have a subscription. I'm just going to go through some of my documents here.
Okay. Now, before you continue, you also run a company that does tenant checks. Is that correct?
We do. Basically 2 things: tenant tracks, which provides background checks, with an emphasis on Connecticut and Massachusetts, because both states are missing key ingredients, if you want to talk about ingredients, in their databases. So when people go on a state website and they do a quick lookup, you're getting 1 out of every 3 evictions, which is hardly enough for anybody to make an informed decision. And in Massachusetts, you can't get a criminal arrest. You can't get a criminal conviction record unless you buy it from the state police. So, I mean, if they've really put the blindfold on these landlords trying to get some good information, our companies, we've dug in and we've actually accessed these records, and that's what sets us apart from anybody else. We have exclusive and proprietary records, because you really need to know who you're renting to before you hand over the keys.
Okay. All right. And
thank you, plug on tenant tracks, by the way.
Right. Tenant tracks. Okay. And if you just joined us, if you can just maybe give me a little comment, make sure you can hear me. We're having some audio issues before. Give me a like. If you're watching us on the replay, give me a like so I knew you were here. All right. So I guess maybe you can tell us, Bob, what's changed? What's new in lead with Section 8?
What I was going to show you before was this wonderful document that is the law change. It was published in the Federal Register, which I'm assuming nobody reads this, because only 52 people in the country commented on it. And what HUD decided to do was lower the level where it considers to be a child that's poisoned from lead. They went from, and the technical stuff, let's just get it over with right now, 20 micrograms per deciliter down to 5. So they ratcheted down the level where they now considered a child to be poisoned. The problem with the law change is it only allows the owner 30 days to abate the lead. But because of Connecticut's policies, owners can't do the work themselves. So they have to hire a lead certified contractor. But But before a contractor can start the work, you have to have a lead management plan. And you also have to have the cash in pocket to do the abatement. So the reality is, if you don't complete all these tasks within 30 days, Section 8 stops paying the landlords the rent. So the biggest problem we have is we're going to see people living for free, owners struggling to do the work, and then not being able to make the mortgage payments.
Okay, so what happens immediately upon there being a lead issue? Do your tenants stay in the apartment?
They could stay in the apartment until the work begins.
And if the work begins, what happens then?
They have to be relocated to a lead safe environment.
Okay, so can I put them in another apartment if I own one?
But you're going to have that apartment inspected by the local health department with an XRF machine. If they find lead, they can't go in there. And the problem with that, Ed, is once they find lead in that new unit, that unit has to be abated. So the theory here is one tenant could take down 5 or 6 units.
Okay, so the only thing left is to put them in a hotel.
Pretty much.
And now, how long? I can't tell them go out and find another apartment.
Well,
or
you
can
you can, but that means you're going to lose your Section 8 tenancy, and you still have the abatement order hanging over your head.
Okay, so it has to get abated either way. Now, so let's see. Can I not rent to children? Can I do that to get around the law here?
Professionally speaking, that would be considered to be illegal because of the fair housing laws.
Okay, so and now I'm in Connecticut, and in Connecticut, tell me, am I wrong to say that if that source of income, that's the way the state puts it, source of income can't be considered. So if somebody comes to me and they have a piece of paper that says that they can get Section 8, I have to rent to them.
You can't deny them based upon their source of income, correct?
Okay, so I can't deny them based on their source of income. Can I require children to be tested for lead before they move into my apartment? Because if they move into my apartment, correct me if I'm wrong, they move into my apartment, they get checked, a week later they have lead, it's my fault, right? It's my apartment's fault?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so can I require children to be tested before they move into the apartment?
I wouldn't advise it.
Okay. So I don't in Connecticut, I must rent to them. And if it turns out that they have lead poisoning, which now this level of 5 micrograms, how difficult is it if there's lead in what does someone have to do to get 5 micrograms? Is that micrograms per deciliter, or is that a concentration, or how does that work?
I think what really needs to happen, Ed, is people have to get the visual on what 5 micrograms per deciliter really means. So we're going, we talk in pounds and we talk ounces in this country, but deciliter is basically you're talking about 1/10 of a liter. It's 3.3 ounces. A microgram, you'd have to go to the beach. Let's get this straight. So you go to the beach, you grab a grain of beach sand, okay, and you literally would have to take a laser and shave off about 3/4 of the mass of that grain of sand, and let's assume that sand now is salt, and drop it into 3.3 ounces of water and say that's going to impact the taste of that water. So we're taking a grain of beach sand, we're literally shaving off 3/4 of the mass of that and saying that's the impact level. I don't want to make a comment. That's
okay. So how is it routine to test children for lead?
3 times before they're age 6, pretty much. Age 1, age 2, and most public school systems require to test before they go into kindergarten. So there's 3 exposures for every child here in Connecticut. It's about 78,000 tests a year are conducted for lead. It's
okay. Do they have evidence as to how much lead is necessary in order to actually impact a child?
Very good question, Ed. When I was a kid, when you were a kid, government had a concern level of 60 micrograms per deciliter.
Okay, so it has gone for over the last 20 years, I'm going to say, because 30 years ago, I don't think anybody was talking about lead.
Correct.
But say 20 years ago, I'm gonna get at some point between then and now, it went from 60 micrograms down to 20 micrograms down to 5 micrograms. Is that right?
There's been different. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, and
Hold on.
by the way, I
Number
want
three,
you to know that what we're talking about here. I don't want any child to be impacted by lead, but by the same token, there's a certain amount, and I don't even know what it is, of background lead that you probably get just by living. And does anybody know what that is, Bob?
Well, it's impossible to get to zero, as you mentioned. Lead's an element on our planet. People need to do a chemistry lesson, but it's part of the periodic table, symbols PB. You can't eradicate it. It's in the air, it's in the food chain, it's in the water. It's and the biggest problem with lead is we've burned it in gasoline for decades, and still there's many countries that still burn leaded gas. So those emissions make it up to the clouds and they come back down as rain. The number one source of lead poisoning is not children eating paint chips like everybody believes. It's coming from lead-enriched soil-borne dust. So the biggest exposure for children is basically near the windows. But even when you replace all the windows in the units with, let's say, nice vinyl replacement windows, lead's still entering in that household unit because it's in the dust. And when you open the windows in the summertime to get fresh air in, the lead-enriched dust is coming into those units. HUD's done a study, and they couldn't understand why that there was, after this remediation process of taking all the windows out and replacing them, that they had higher levels of lead. It's called lead loading. So the floors and the windowsills, they come in and they do dust wipes. But after they did the replacement of all the windows, that there was higher levels of lead in the unit. And I says, I'm not that smart, but the windows open. Because a lot of these older houses, the windows are painted shut and you can't open them. But when you have a new vinyl window, they open it up. So the lead's coming into the unit. And now they're saying it's your problem, Mr. Landlord, because, well, the child's got lead poisoning and we've got such a lower level. A lot of these kids are going to get it just because of seasonality. In the summertime, lead levels spike. So,
okay. So I want to talk about what money there is to abate the lead, if there's grants or loans. But first, what can we do about this new ruling, and what can we do to get HUD to change it back to the way it was, or to something more reasonable?
The sad part, Ed, was HUD. We've been in contact with the call it the powers that be, and we've had direct conversations with HUD. And HUD says, we know, but we don't care. We know it's unreasonable, 30 days, but you know what? We don't care. Which brings people to speculate that the real reason why they've done this is to drive people off the Section 8 program. So HUD made $100 million available to de-lead housing, but HUD also pays $20 billion a year to run the Section 8 program. So it's looking like, and some people are speculating that this was a way to decrease the budget for Section 8, knowing that once, and again, we're at the very tip of the iceberg. This conversation tonight really has only been had in the circles of the people with the public health providers and the companies that deal with lead abatement. And the reason why is that the crisis has not impacted landlords because they're still setting up the infrastructure to determine the children that have the 5 level that are getting Section 8. And the way the processes work is they're only data matching every 90 days. But before they could data match, the state had to have memorandums of understanding with all the housing authorities to share information between the housing authorities and the health agencies. And they've only got about 20% of those agreements in place. So the first wave that came through, you're talking, there was no pipeline to flow the information. I'll tell you, by the time the pipeline is up and running, this is going to be a full blown crisis. But right now, we're just in the very beginning stages of this process.
Okay, so a lot of us may have lead in our apartments because at one point lead was required by some certain government loans. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So if you wanted to meet FHA requirements, at one point you were required to have lead paint in your house. And now you're telling me that they're going to ding you because you have a house that's old enough to have been required to have lead paint?
Most houses built prior to 78 have lead paint in them.
Okay. All right. So there isn't anything there's nobody to complain to. Can you complain to your senator or your congressman?
No. Connecticut's got as you know, what I've been doing for the years, we've got a pretty good network. So the source right now is Senator Murphy. The other person that may have some interest in this is Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. And the truth is that what the ask is that the time frame's impossible. I mean, we've had advocates that have funding to make available. We sat with the city agencies, the health departments that have funding. You just can't do it in 30 days. It's more like 5 or 6 months.
Okay. What kind of money is available to abate to pay to abate the lead?
Rough average is about $9,000 per unit, and it typically comes in as a grant, so it's really free money. But there's a 36-month or 3-year sort of a deed restriction where that money will be on the land record, but every year it disappears by 33%. So there is money available, and it's good money because it's free money. But again, you have to apply for it, and there's different sources. There's different pockets of money. Connecticut Children's Healthy Homes Program, run by Chris Corcoran, covers many cities in Connecticut. Then, you got the Naugatuck Valley Health District that basically does the valley. City of New Britain's got a program. City of Hartford's got a program. New Haven's got a program. Waterbury and Norwich, along with Bridgeport. So there's pockets of money out there. And typically about $9,000 a unit, which on average covers the estimated cost, unless you've got to do vinyl siding. And then there may be some other funds available for you, but the problem is this money is going to dry up once this becomes commonplace knowledge in the market. We're talking a couple million, in Waterbury, and a couple million in Chris's program. You're going to lose 6 months of worth of rent unless you've got, let's say unit. So, again, we're at the very, very tip of the iceberg of this issue here. So glad you invited me on tonight.
Okay, great. And by the way, if you're watching, you have any questions, you can just post your question and we'll answer it. So you're saying that there's money available today, and it's available if they just anybody who has an apartment that may have a lead issue, they'll come out, and I assume they come out, they check the apartment, they check the outside of the house to see if it's got lead paint too, and you can use that money. Is that correct?
That is, and I think honestly, that's the game plan, is to get, you want to get the good landlords, into the flow right now, because I don't know how much money is going to be available down the road, and okay. We're talking the federal level is at 5, and the state level hasn't moved off of its 15-20 numbers. But you got to believe there's a lot of push from the lead advocate community to make Connecticut follow the federal level. And then that's another discussion for another night.
So Connecticut has a different level than the federal, but if your tenant is on Section 8, then you got to use the Section 8 level. Is that right?
This right now, this law only applies to Section 8.
Okay.
Tenants.
All right. Well, thank you. And if you've got tenants that you need to find out whether what their history is, then they should call Tenant Tracks. Is that right? And Bob, what's your number?
Actually, if you've got interest in the program, no, don't call Tenant Tracks.
No. If you have interest in checking out your tenant, you should call Tenant Tracks, right?
If you want to know who you're renting to, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
That number is 888-610-4710. But if anybody's got questions about funding for the lead issue, they should call 1-800-369-6153. And again, our job right now, Ed, is to drive people to the money before the money's gone.
Okay. Can you just give me that telephone number again? Because I'm going to post it under here.
800-369
Mm-hmm.
6153.
6153. And thank you for joining us today.
All right.
This is Ed Weinberg, and thanks for joining us. We do this periodically. You can find this and other interviews on Facebook at CTRE Media. It will eventually end up at CTREinvestors.com. And of course, you can come and join our group at CTRE Investors. So everybody, have a great night.
Thanks, Ed.